Well, welcome everybody to the Eden Army podcast. I'm your host tonight, Pete Robertucci. This is March 26th, I think. Yep, sure is. Season 2, episode 10 of the podcast. So we're coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and of course our favorite, Kick.com. Let me get Russ off my back real quick, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. All of this stuff, even stuff I post on social media. No, look, I get it. I post a lot of BS on social media. Share it. It gets the word out. Thank you, Ed, Fireman Ed, Meta, and Terry for your resubscription. It keeps the lights on, and that's why I'm here every week for you guys. It's not for me. It's for you guys. Tonight, we're going to be talking about prepping and politics, of course, like we always do, both domestically and on the world stage. We're going to touch bases about the new DHS secretary. Love that guy. Power through strength, right? Or something like that, Trump says. Well, this is the guy that fits that bill. We're going to talk about ICE in the airport and the absurd comments that Timu Obama said about ICE. That's Hakeem Jeffries, if you don't know who I'm referring to. And also an update on the bomb found at MacDill Air Force Base that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, home of CENTCOM, right? And we got to talk about the Iranian war, right? That's why our special guest is here tonight, Imri Morgenstern from Prime Combat Training. It's a mouthful. He grew up here in the United States before serving in the IDF, where he helped build the first hostage rescue breaching squadron and played a key role in developing cold breach SOPs. He's a certified hostage rescue breach master and somebody I am proud to call my friend. Imri, welcome, sir, to the Eden Army podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
That's good stuff. That is awesome. Let me see. I got my notes here, Imri. It's been a while since you've been on, but there's a lot of stuff since you were on last time that's going on in the Middle East. It appears we're on day 26 of the war with Iran, a conflict that began with the U.S. and Israel dropping some bombs on their asses, which started on the 28th of February, and has quickly escalated across the regions, with Iran even lobbing bombs, thousands of missiles and drones at some of their friends in the Middle East. But they're not psychopaths. They're not crazy, right? They're not terrorists. Russ, good to see you, brother. I'm not leaving you out.
Oh, no worries, man. No worries.
But before we get started and get into the specifics of the war, your expertise, right? There's a lot of debate in the media right now. Some are saying that this isn't a war for America, and this is something we shouldn't be involved in, and that we're actually acting as a proxy for the Israeli government. Imri, what would you say to people who think that kind of way?
Well, I would say, first of all, show me your GED, because, you know, it just doesn't really add up, right? I think anybody that thinks that they view the world too myopically and listen to too many idiots without trying to make sense of things, you know, with what's called critical thinking. I know that's kind of a skill in our society, but look, Israel, country of 9 million people, give or take, a fifth of which are Muslim Arabs, is not in control of, you know, the strongest nation on the planet. That's one, you know, and yeah, we know the Jews control the media, Jews control this, Jews control that. Got it. I'm still waiting to control anything, including my dog.
You know, try getting married. See how that goes.
No kidding. No kidding.
Try marrying a Jewish woman, right?
Oh, come on.
But, you know, I mean, look, that's ridiculous. You know, there's a great relationship right now, at least during Biden. Jesus, I'm sorry, Mr. Trump.
Oh.
I did not mean that. Now during the second Trump presidency, I think, you know, there's clearly a good relationship between him and Bibi Netanyahu, right, the Israeli prime minister. And so I'm sure there's obviously a lot of back and forth and a lot of, you know, hey, should we do this? When do we do that? Should we, you know, and so I'm sure there's, you know, there's a lot affecting each other. But to think that Israel is driving America into this thing, A, is just asinine at face value. B, it's completely disregarding current geopolitics, right? It's just like being completely oblivious to what are the interests of America in going into this thing? And people say, well, Iran. Yes, we are fighting Iran, but we are fighting so much more than Iran. And by fighting, if and when we can achieve all these goals, which I'd love to get into, because some of them may be slightly on unachievable, at least in this time frame side. If we can achieve all that, what we are achieving is so much beyond not having the biggest global funder and director of terrorism, right next door to Qatar, who is kind of on that same level in a different way. Not only are we doing that, not only are we opening the Straits of Hormuz, which is a giant global thing, right? Not our war, right? Germany, England, blah, 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 those morons in Europe. But it's totally ignoring the after effects, what it does with our relationship in China and, in Russia and all the other actors and all the other would-be actors that we don't even know about yet that might come out in the future that go, hey, man, this changed the whole planet, right? This is changing the structure of geopolitics right now.
Well, and that's what we had mentioned last week, right? When you look at the geopolitical strategy that this administration is going with, first of all, we took control of the Venezuelan oil. We will take control of the Iranian oil. That, in theory, should cut off China and make China basically, well, let's be honest, they're just going to make China our bitch, because they're not going to have any type of fuel resources available. They don't make their own. They don't have their own oil. So they're reliant on those two nations, which now Trump has seized, or he will soon seize. We'll see how this all plays out. But it appears to me that the Iranians want this war to end. They want it to end, regardless of what CNN is telling you, where the Iranians are saying, no, we're not negotiating. They are certainly negotiating, so much so that Trump said, okay, look, I'm now going to give you 10 days before we start bombing your power plants. Why? Because they let 8 oil tankers through the Straits of Hormuz, which means Trump is talking to the right person.
This is a show of good faith, right?
Exactly.
This is the start. This is it. Pete, there's so much in what you just said, right? What you just said is like, there's like 10 different topics to go into from there.
Certainly.
And that's the problem with these things, right? Is we have to, we have to take it one thing at a time. And for people to understand, and it's not like I'm some expert either, right? I don't see myself as an expert, but I certainly have, quite a bit of experience in the region and all that and elsewhere. In order to explain any one of these, you have to start getting into like 4 other things to give background to whatever it is you're talking. And that's true for just about any topic. So, since October 7th, I've seen my job while I'm here in the States to explain to people what the hell's going on, right? Because even if you trust your whatever news source it is that you read, or news sources, right, it's never giving you a full picture, right? It's typically clickbait, and you can't corroborate things, et cetera, et cetera. And so, without knowing really a lot of like personal experience background and things that in the Middle East are just known, I'll just give you a silly but really poignant example is the statement from the river to the sea. You remember when they started saying that bullshit? Mm-hmm. At the Antifa rallies, I'll call them for lack of a better term. But when they started saying that, and people here were like, oh, well, from the river to the sea sounds like, they want their land back. So, when people from back home are like, hey, no, here's what it means. Right. And then people question that. Well, of course he's saying that, but what they don't understand is we have been hearing that in full context since, whenever they came up with that statement in like 67 or, somewhere many decades ago, they started saying that, and they said it very clearly, and the sentence went on. It wasn't just that, right? So,
right.
So things that are just obvious and we take for granted that are fact over there, to hear, to bring that information here, you really have to explain to people, and they have to be willing to actually hear people's opinion.
Well, and
Right?
that's the normalizing of anti-Semitism, right? That's what they're trying to do, is normalize that with a catchy little phrase here and there. That's okay then, because that sounds really good. But no, what you're really saying is you want to exterminate the Israeli people, the Jewish people. That's what you're saying when you say that. For a group of people that have no stake in that land, if you know anything about history for the most part. And the real key is, you don't need to be a scholar. You don't need to have your bachelor's in history. Guys, especially nowadays with AI, all you got to do is ask. All you got to do is ask, and you'll realize that you just have to have a general knowledge of Middle Eastern history, and you can weed through a lot of this bullshit, right? I mean,
I would think so, but apparently it's not so simple for a lot of people, right?
you would think. I think common sense is in short supply nowadays, right?
Sure
it's
is.
in heavy demand, short supply.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But the Iranian war, it seems at this go around now, some of their proxies have stayed relatively quiet, with the exception, of course, is Hezbollah, right? But even there, their situations kind of seems to be dwindling a little bit. I just saw something that the Iranian delegation is being asked to leave Lebanon, which is huge.
By the Lebanese government.
By the Lebanese government. And that's what people don't understand a lot. The country of Lebanon is, for all intents and purposes, being held hostage by Hezbollah, right? They don't want the repercussions. Not only do they not want the military repercussions from that militia terrorist group, they also don't want the drawbacks the repercussions from the hard-wing Islamists, right? So it's a huge thing. But what do you think it's going to take to completely remove the Hezbollah threat once and for all out of Lebanon?
$1 million question that's been asked in Israel for so long, right? I think we are moving in as good a direction as we can with it. Do I think it can be absolutely eliminated? No, just like Hamas, just like, all those other groups. Look, we America have been fought ISIS and did all this stuff, right? ISIS is still not gone. It's not really a relevant factor, but it's not gone, right? So Hezbollah in Lebanon is a very tough cookie to crack, because it was created by, and obviously with the help and direction of, Iran, right, from its inception. And the reason it was easy for Iran to get into that door was because of the Shia population in Lebanon. Now, Lebanon is not a Shia nation. Lebanon, technically speaking, was supposed to have been started as a Christian country, right? Based on mainly French, but also British influence after the two great wars. After World War I, the entire Middle East changed, right? I'm sorry that I'm taking it all the way back there, but we got to give context.
Mm-hmm.
So after World War I, essentially, the Europeans, mainly the British and French, took over that area. And that's where, right after, 1917, 1919, all that kind of period where the British mainly just decided, they took a pencil and drew out borders, and Iraq and Iran and Saudi Arabia and all that shit, and they just divided up everything. And not to speak of Jordan, whole different thing. So Lebanon was kind of a French colony, if you will, or under French mandate, I suppose would be a more accurate way to say it. And it was started in a way, a very French way, that clearly doesn't work, right? Where the government was set up to kind of prop up the Christians in Lebanon, right? If you think about it, that area, Lebanon, Syria, even though today we think of them as strictly Muslim countries, are where Christianity started, right? The very earliest Christianity, right after Jesus died, so many of his followers moved up north, just a couple days walk, right? At the time, no trains. Right. So it's just a few days walk north from there. And so, it was the natural first place for Christianity to spread to. That's why so many of the Copts left, right, Coptic Christians, and and some of them even speak Aramaic still. Even the Jews don't speak Aramaic anymore. That was the spoken language of the Jewish people. Hebrew, to remind you, was reserved for prayer and reading the Bible. Aramaic was the spoken form of Hebrew, and the Copts in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, a lot of them, their native tongue is Aramaic. And so just think about that as a connection, right? When we talk about all these things. So the way the Lebanese government was set up was like, and don't quote me on the accuracy of who got which role, but the roles were divvied up per religion. So like, Christian, the prime minister or the president, whatever, is supposed to be Christian. The minister of defense is supposed to be Druze. This guy can be Muslim, et cetera, et cetera. And so now with that knowledge in mind, think about, the 60s, 70s, 80s, the Arafat period, right, where Arafat was in charge of the PLO. Now that's a Palestinian Liberation Organization. That's what now is known as the Palestinian Authority. So, and I mention him because he was also in Lebanon for a lot of this and started all these Palestinian uprisings from Lebanon into Israel. And that was the same time frame. They crossed over with the time frame of the creation of Hezbollah. Okay, so I know this is getting deep and probably pretty convoluted for some of our listeners, but
but all this needs to be said because you have to understand the history behind it before you can cross judgment, right? Before you can say this is not our war, these are not our people, this is not. You have to know the history behind it. So by all means, go.
Awesome, thank you. So, excuse me, in the last month or so, right, or even less, like just in the last couple of weeks, after the start of this Iran escapade that we're on right now, you've been hearing every day. I have been hearing and watching people interview Lebanese people, both Christian and Muslims, even on Lebanese TV, but also on interviews to other international people, saying, and this is like, you open your eyes, you go, oh my God, what's going on? Where they're saying, hey, look, we can't blame Israel for what's going on here. We need to get these Hezbollah guys out, blah, blah, blah. Now, a lot of people have thought that in Lebanon. Unlike Gaza, Lebanon has a big mixture of belief systems, and it's a country where people think things different from each other, where Gaza is more of like just this hive mentality. Everybody's, surrounded around this queen bee, which is Hamas, by the way. And everybody's kind of part of this bundle of bees trying to stay warm for the winter. And Lebanon's not that way, right? But Hezbollah, even though they have representation in government, but Hezbollah has never been in charge of government officially, overtly. They've been controlling it kind of subversively, right? So they're very kind of wicked about how they do that, but they have a lot of control because they've always been the violent ones. Right. And we have the Shia militia that has been ruling de facto Lebanon, and the people have been sick of it for a long time. Now the people are really affected, and we have what's been going on since October 7th during the actual war, and then we have like this new era in this war, which is now once America and Israel have started this operation against Iran. What a lot of people here don't see, but in Israel, and I read the Israeli news, and by the way, both right and left sides of the Israeli news every day, among others. And of course, my whole family is there. I have thousands of friends there, my teammates, my everything, right? And so I'm very, very connected with how it's going. And I know every time my alarms go off, I have it on silent now, but when we have missile alarms and stuff going off. So yeah, Lebanon we have been bombing the shit out of Lebanon since this latest Iran thing started, and it's been every day. Now Lebanon also has been bombing the shit. Bombing is not accurate, but sending mainly rockets and some missiles and some. Just yesterday we had 2 soldiers killed by an actual anti-tank missile. Right, so it's all those things, but they're and just yesterday we had two pretty major towns. One's a city in Israel, in northern Israel, get hit directly by Hezbollah rockets, right? And with dead and wounded. And so, but now we have been so intensively bombing Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, and it's really starting to have an effect now. I have believed for years, just like every other military person, that you absolutely cannot, it is not possible to win a war strictly through air superiority. I, to a degree, am being proven wrong, and to the other degree, being proven right? Excuse me, because we are making such tremendous leaps and bounds just through this aerial assault that we're doing, both against Iran and against the Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I'm careful to say against Hezbollah in Lebanon, because we are not going against Lebanon,
right,
against Hezbollah, right? And we are taking extreme measures to minimize the collateral damage in Lebanon and Iran.
It's interesting you say that, because we talked about this a little bit in the green room, and we talked about military doctrine. And tell us some of the things that people might not know that Israel does to mitigate collateral damage, right? Like,
Sure.
There's times where, yes, you're going to drop pamphlets, but you will actually call some of the terrorists you want to bomb and say, look, we're taking out this building. We know there's a weapon stock. Get everybody out of it. Speak to that a little bit, because people think that there's this big, especially during the Hamas war, it's a big Holocaust going on there. It's a genocide. They're killing everybody, right? Speak to some of the things that the IDF does in particular to mitigate collateral damage, despite what you might hear on Al Jazeera.
Right. Well, so let's start with Air Force, right? Because that's kind of the easy place to start. As far as Air Force strikes, because they are, it's not a scalpel in the sense that a M4 bullet is, right? There's going to be some collateral damage, and we try to make that collateral damage. We try to limit that to buildings, not humans, right? It's impossible to completely eliminate human collateral damage. But as one example, we have a whole body inside of the military who is responsible for speaking to the enemy, like citizenry, right? And so, we have Arabic speakers, we have Farsi speakers, whatever, and they're putting out social media content. Which obviously in a lot of places, like in Iran right now, that's kind of unreachable, right? They drop leaflets. We have good intelligence, right? Which means, we send out text messages and phone calls to everybody in certain areas. Hey, this is coming by tomorrow at noon. Don't be in this neighborhood. We'll drop maps. We'll in all kinds of different ways, make sure that information gets across, that guys at such and such hour don't be here, and we give them enough time, which means we're giving the enemy enough time to not be there. We're giving the enemy the exact knowledge on where we're attacking. This is the same thing that's happened in Gaza. We're also doing it in Lebanon, and believe it or not, we and the United States is also doing that in Iran, right? So that is happening in Iran.
Sure.
And that's not really being reported on, right? So of course, Iran is a very different animal from the Palestinians and the Lebanese and all that, but kind of separate part of the conversation. So that's one thing. I can tell you that I have seen tons of video, and I'm not talking about internet video. I'm talking about mission video the military internally releases of Air Force strikes. And by the way, this is not just during this war. This is always, Israel has always done this. I have the target. I'm locked onto the target. I see the building. I see three, military age males carrying AKs, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. Oh, I see a child. There's a child in the area. Mission gets called off.
Sure.
Right. So, and I would say, I can't give you a number on how many missions get called off versus not because of things like this. I simply don't know. But I can tell you that it's many, many, many. So those are on the Air Force level. On the we'll call it infantry level, right? On the ground forces level, I can tell you that ROEs are stringent, to say the least. Having been, I've done 3 deployments already in this war, right? 2 to Gaza, 1 to Lebanon. I can tell you the personality even of the soldiers. Forget government a second. I can tell you the personality of the soldiers. All of us want to win this war. All of us want to kill as many bad guys as possible. 100%. None of us want, regardless of political belief, none of us want to kill innocent people. And I can tell you that about, at least the majority of all soldiers in Israel, right? We are a well-educated, for the most part, thinking group of people. And the army in Israel promotes thought. It promotes critical thinking in its soldiers. And we can get into that, but that's not necessarily relevant. And so, I can tell you that we have, I have been on missions that have been canceled during this war because of danger to Gazan civilians or Lebanese civilians, right? That shit happens all the time.
I would say that the Israeli military, as far as a moral compass, is I mean, they're on the right path, right? They're probably one of the most moral militaries I've ever seen in my lifetime. America, quite frankly, is a close second. Just based on the people that I know that have been in the IDF, the missions like you talked about that have turned away. It's they're right there together, right? Nobody wants to see civilians get hit, but Israel just goes above and beyond. And what really gets under my craw a little bit is that people say, well the attack in Gaza that was a genocide. Israel dropped so many bombs in Gaza that if they wanted civilians wiped out, it would not have been a problem at all. Not have been a problem. It would have been very easy, very easy. So yes, were civilians killed? Yes, it's a very dense population. Of course, it's a collateral damage is going to happen. The fog of war is going to happen. Do you have a few unscrupulous military personnel? Yes, you do. America did. Abu Ghraib is a perfect example of that, right? These things happen, right? These things, you get caught up in that bloodlust. They happen. It's unfortunate, but look, Israel holds them to account, right? There are IDF people right now sitting in prison because of some of the stupid shit they did, and they will not probably see the light of day for a very long time.
And some of them I may agree with, but I don't agree. Like on a feeling level, I agree with. Right. But we all know there's a bit of a difference, oftentimes a very big difference, between what you feel might be right in the moment and what is morally or ethically correct.
Exactly.
And I'll give you an example from a few years ago so that it's not even connected to this war, right? And actually, I can give you some old examples of Hamas to the contrary, but, we had this soldier, Elor Azaria was his name, he's still alive. And he was a kid. He was a 19, 20-year-old kid, just out of training, regular infantry unit, no high-level training or anything. They're somewhere in the Judea and Samaria area, and this is maybe 7-8 years ago, somewhere in that kind of time frame. These soldiers fell into a terrorist attack. What I mean by that is 2 younger, I believe they're like 17, 19, or 19 and 20 or whatever. 2 Palestinians came up and started stabbing and shooting these soldiers. Well, the soldiers opened up on them. And then 11 minutes later, another group of soldiers got there to back them up. Excuse me. And this kid came up, and you see him, and it's on video, and the 2 terrorists are on the floor, and they are terrorists, but they are no longer combatants that warrant deadly force because they have been neutralized. One of them was on the ground dead. The other was on the ground not dead. And this kid came up, charged his weapon, and shot this guy on the floor, and he went to jail. And there was a big thing about it in Israel, big fight among the people, a big argument among the people.
I remember.
Right, wrong. The guy's a terrorist. He just came up and stabbed soldiers, blah, blah, blah. In my personal view, shoot the guy. Absolutely. We owe him nothing. On the other hand, we are not them. We are not them. And this is the perfect example that exemplifies why we are not them or how.
Right. And even and I would think that 100% justified, right? It's not like they're not known to have suicide vests, and it only takes that to set that off, right? So Yeah, I'm in the mindset, but again, I mean, that's that moral compass that the IDF has, the American operators have also. It's
Yes. Let me
I don't
give you
know.
a story from the other direction,
Hmm.
right? This is during my time. This is somewhere between 2003 and 2006 ish. I don't remember exactly when. We were on a thing in Gaza, southern Gaza, in kind of the Rafah area, and which is the southern Gaza Strip. We were on kind of an urban ambush, if you will, and we were in a building. I can't get into all the details, but what I will say is, the area got really hot, so to speak, right? A lot of stuff going on. This is already during the day. We were there for a couple of days already. And what had happened was they hired a Chechen sniper, the Palestinians did. 'Cause back then, the Hamas was much worse trained and equipped than they are today, right? Because guess who? Iran,
Yeah,
China,
thanks to Iran.
or Korea
Mhm.
armed them. And we know this both through intelligence and through finding their weapons on the ground, right? But so anyway, so that day, I was in a different room doing different work. Part of my team opened up this other side of the building because things were getting pretty hot. And what had happened was they saw two military age males in civilian clothes, right? Of course, they don't wear uniforms when they're fighting by definition. So they come out with a soccer ball with a group of, 10 or 12 kids, teenagers, younger side teenagers, and they put two rocks down here, two rocks down there. There's your goal. There's your goal. Here's your ball. Play ball. About 100 meters. So this is in like a sand pit that goes out to about 100, 120 meters from the edge of the building we were in. So they put these kids there to play. On the other side of that little sand lot, there's a wall, maybe, I don't know, meter and a half high, right? So like 4 or 5 feet high. And there's a hole in it. Well, that sniper had placed himself behind that hole, and he had figured out where we were and which building and kind of which floor, started shooting into the windows we were in. And what they were trying to do is draw our fire into these children, right? So he, from the safety of the wall, would pop out, take a shot at the window, and pop back in. We managed to neutralize them without hitting any kids that day. That was great. And I remember the conversations going on. Obviously I was on the radio. Of course, my gun was in a bit of a different direction, doing other things that were also hot. But that's what was happening in that side of the house. So, and I have 100 examples like that, right? So
Hmm.
this is how they've always fought wars. And I keep telling people, look, I'm no scholar, but if you want to understand them, read their book. It's just that simple because it's all there, black on white.
Yeah.
It's all verbatim. The things that Muhammad told them to do are what they're doing today. And so we must read their book. We must understand them a little bit because we in the West, not just Americans, not just Israelis, we, the West, have such different priorities in life. And we do a unbelievably terrible job at even trying to view the world through our enemy's eyes. And so we attribute our values to them when we're trying to understand why they're doing something. And that's not a way to understand your enemy, right?
Wait, right, and you can't. You have to understand their ideology, right? And that's what it all boils down
And the
to. If you
culture.
don't, and
Mhm.
the culture, yeah. I mean, this is tribal warfare for the most part. The Sunnis and Shias have been at each other their own throats for the longest time. But the ideology, how do you squish that ideology? That's the $1 million question, right? I don't. I mean, I know how I would do it, but I can't say it on the internet. But how do you squish that? First of all, you are able to debate it because you know their doctrine. And if you don't read their book, then you'll never know their doctrine, and you'll take any internet guru's word for it that Muhammad's the prophet, this, that, the other thing. But you have to understand, you have to read the text and understand where they're coming from, just like you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, I know their stuff to a degree. And I would say to a lesser degree, I'm not a scholar. I do sit and read the Quran. Guilty pleasure right here that I have to admit on, in front of an international potentially audience. But I love, when do I have time to read? To actually sit and read when I'm on the airplane.
Right.
So
That's
I just
that's
put it
not.
on my phone and I'll take it out and read it.
Yeah, don't pull out the text while you're on the airplane. That might not be good.
So I do that. I don't have a hard copy. It's just on my phone. But, and those who understand sometimes understand. And, it's pretty obvious, should be pretty obvious to people that I'm not, one of those people when I get on the flight, but whatever. But I do that.
I don't know.
You can download that for free. You can download the Quran. I just started doing it on Audible, so I could just keep listening to it. A lot of it is convoluted and silly, and a lot of it really is poignant and shows us exactly what they're thinking. But we're not trying to have a conversation about the Quran, right? I'm just saying, I'm urging everybody, I'm urging all humanity to go read this, just like I would urge, which I've not done, by the way, I would urge everybody to read Mein Kampf. I don't want to order it because I don't want to be on that list. But I should go read Mein Kampf because, our internal enemies, all the Tucker Carlsons and the America hating, weird people on the right and the left and all that, they, some of them do use that as a guideline, right? And we're aware of that here.
Right.
So, it goes down to knowing your enemy.
That's exactly it. And if you don't understand what's driving them, you have no chance of defeating them. No chance.
Right. And history is going to already tell us their tactics, right? Unfortunately, we don't, we're doomed to repeat history because we don't open our eyes, right? So, yeah, Imri, I'm with you. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the news here, the Iranian war, before we get too far. But I want you to keep doing what you're doing after this question. It seemed like Iran was negotiating prior to the war with the Trump administration, and I don't think the Iranians sent their best negotiators because reports have claimed that the negotiators said that they have enough enriched uranium up to 60% for 11 nuclear weapons. In your opinion, without giving away any sensitive information, was that intelligence already known to Israel, or do you think the United States shared that information prior to the war, which might have prompted let's get this thing going on?
My best guess is that, yes, it was absolutely known to the intelligence circles and political circles in Israel. That's my guess. I am not in the intelligence world there, right? But I'm plugged in, right?
There's always chatter.
Right. So they're saying they have somewhere in the area of 400 to 450 kilos, right, times 2.2 to get to pounds of enriched uranium to at least 60%. 60% enrichment is not enough to make a bomb, but the higher you get in the further along you get in the enrichment process, the easier it is from that point to get to the percentage that you need to create a bomb. Mm-hmm. Having said that, 60% grade uranium is strong enough to make all kinds of dirty bombs, for example, and that's a big fear. Having said all that, though, I want to veer away from the actual nuke discussion just for a second, because I don't see the nuclear part of this as being the most important thing here in starting this war. So, or I should say initiating this war, right? Because it was a preventative measure. But I don't believe, and by the way, for all those, when Trump said he was against war, well, I do believe that Trump is against war. And I don't believe that Trump started a war. Trump initiated a military move based on necessity right now, right? And thank God that we have Trump right now, because he's the only person. And by the way, I'm not like an only Trumper. I'm not, getting into that conversation. I'll be happy to open it up. But all I'm saying is, thank God we got somebody with the understanding and enough balls to go do what we have to do, right? And at his own peril in terms of, assassination attempts and losing the next election potentially, the midterm, not the next, obviously can't, run for president again. Thank God we have a guy who is so crazy that he's willing to do the correct things, right? And I say crazy. I don't, need anybody to jump on me. But it takes a different person to break the pattern of our previous, however many presidents who refuse to actually take any substantial action until it's too late, right? even going back to World War I, World War II, when does America typically join things? It starts joining when it's like, what's that medical term for like the smallest little amount?
Yeah.
When it's that far away from
Popping off. Yeah.
Well,
right from being too late for us. It took a Pearl Harbor for us to not sinking our ships, not destroying our trade routes in World II. It took Pearl Harbor for us to actually get up and do something about it. So, yeah, I mean, it's very complicated. I'm very grateful, very, very grateful for the world, not just for Israel. I am grateful for America, and I am grateful for the rest of the planet, even though they're thankless idiots over in Spain, for example, who don't understand. In Spain, of all people, right? You guys were under Islam for 500 years until you managed to kick him out. And it wasn't even you guys that kicked him out. It was the other Europeans.
Well, mass immigration has ruined Europe. I mean, they're done. All their
Europe's
leaders all of their leaders are afraid to speak out because of a lot of their populace right now is Muslims. And unaccounted for Muslims. I'm not talking about, look, I'm not saying Islam is bad, whatever. I got my own personal opinions there. I'm with you. I just didn't want to say it. They don't assimilate to us. I get it. I understand.
I will say it and I will back it up. I'm sorry. I don't mean to step on you, but I will say it and I will back up with facts exactly why it is actual evil.
I agree. I can't. There's nothing I can say, but I agree 100%. But the problem is that's the reason these European nations are capitulating so fast. They have so many Islamic or Muslim immigrants right there. They are afraid of them storming the streets. There are places in Europe a woman by themselves cannot even go for fear of getting raped. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. And if you look at the crime statistics from 10 or 15 years ago, they're astronomical. It's ridiculous. Europe is lost. Europe has fallen, in my opinion. Now, I did see on the news today that some of the parliaments inside of Europe are starting to crack down. Thank you, Donald Trump, and your speeches to the European nations. Maybe that's starting to sink in. But look, we can get into the whole Islam compatibility debate forever and ever, and we get us all in trouble.
I'll tell you what, if you deem it appropriate, I will come back on and I will lay out my whole argument on Islam. But right now we're trying to do the actual war thing, right?
Right. Well, yeah. But no, I'm not opposed to doing anything at this point, to be honest with you. It's not like I'm monetized anywhere. They're not going to take away my birthday cake. I'm not too worried about it.
I used to try to be careful about what I say publicly. And I still do to a degree, right? I'm trying to, I try to do things to a degree objective. Obviously, I'm not an objective observer in this thing. I'm a very, very, I'm on one side for sure, as I think all of us, if we have more than 2 brain cells, should be. But anymore, I've realized, look, we've gone through this whole woke bullshit. We've gone through the Me Too movement. I'm just talking about the internal American stuff that has made cancel culture and all that shit. We've been through that. All of us understand just how idiotic that is and how undemocratic that is. And I have reached the conclusion with myself at the beginning of this war that I'm done. I am done. I'm done trying to be nice. I'm done trying to sugarcoat things so that I don't, so that I don't offend somebody. God forbid. I'm not afraid of offending a Muslim, because if you believe in Islam, right, and I try to do my due diligence and read your stuff. I've spoken to I don't know how many Muslims in my life and Arabs and blah blah blah. If you believe in that religion and you believe it according to its own scriptures, then you have no right to exist in our country, because you are against our values and you are against rights for individual liberties. That's what this country is built on. That's what Western values, modern Western values, have been built on until all this bullshit we've been seeing with, cancel culture, woke, blah, 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 all that stuff. So,
and that's getting back to the Europe thing and Islam in general. That's what I tell people over and over again. I go, look, they're all moderate Muslims until they have the numbers. Right?
I don't want to be a scratch record. read their book. Right?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Let me give the example, because it's exactly what you're saying, right? If you read their book, or any writings even about their book, read a historical, account of Muhammad's life. And I'll give just a very basic, easy, example. Muhammad started off in Mecca, right? Mecca was the big, wonderful city that they had back then. The Kaaba, by the way, right? That black rock they all do the Hajj to. They're pilgrim. Every Muslim has to do at least once in their life. That predates Islam, right? That was some meteor or some black rock that fell from the sky, right? God, I wonder what else that could have been. Anyway, it's a rock that they used to pray to and do the Hajj to way before Islam. And just like every new religion, when it starts, in order to bring people into its fold, incorporates some local previous customs to make people feel at home, right? Christianity example, the Christmas tree, right? And so anyway, Muhammad started in Mecca, and then their whole business, the business model of the city, had such a huge part of it, of the money they were making, was these pilgrimages that the polytheistic Arabs that inhabited the Arabian Peninsula previously, they would come up and they would stay there and they would eat there and they would do their stuff, right? So bringing their money, and they would buy the little statues, the little figurines of their various gods to place on the rock, right?
Right.
So Muhammad came in with a monotheistic religion and said, everything you guys believe in is now bad and evil and you're going to hell, and I'm going to get the virgins for you going to hell. And he pissed them off, so they were going to kill him, right? Once he was, as the story goes, he was woken up by one of his followers. It may have been a cousin or whatever, and what had happened was he ran away to Medina. And now you can't be a rock star in your own backyard. He ran away to Medina, started a bigger following, and built up this military until he came back and conquered Mecca. Different story. The point I'm trying to get to is that what he learned from that, and what he told his followers based on his experience there, is to spread Islam, you go to other places that don't believe. You go to what's called Dar al-Kharb, or Dar al-Kufar, the land of war, or the land of the disbelievers, right, of the infidel. And then you play the poor card. You play the refugee card until such time that you have enough strength and to be able to start a jihad fil sayf, jihad with the war, with the sword, right? And so it's Muhammad's exact lessons that we are seeing now in Europe and in America.
Yep.
Right.
And they've always said that Europe was going to fall first, and then it's on to, they're not even worried about the Middle East right now. They're worried Europe, United States. They've given us their playbook, not to mention the Quran, which is their ultimate playbook. But even scholars have said this is what they are going to do. This is how they're going to do it. But it falls on deaf ears, and mostly because of leftist ideology here within the United States, where everybody has to be included in everything, right? There are some people in this world that will never assimilate. They will never follow our values. And a lot of it is because of the ideology. A lot of them just because they're leeches on society. Let's be honest. By design, 100%. And you look at most of the Somali immigrants that came over, I don't know, 75% of them are on welfare. They're outbreeding us. And the other 25%, by the way, is just running leering centers in Minnesota. So no big deal there. But
we should all be leering.
I want to open up a leering center, for the love of God. Well, I just given the leering centers a lot of money this last tax return. So, but I want to talk about.
Are you going to open the Leering Center for kids who don't read good?
Exactly, or spell good.
Or spell good, yeah.
Let's talk about Israel for a little bit, because I know there's a little bit of stuff going on with Netanyahu. Of course, he's been under investigation for quite some time now. But that's not important. Everyone's under investigation. Trump's under investigation constantly. If a guy wants a box of cigars, let him have a box of cigars. He wants a little champagne, let him have champagne. But what's the general opinion of Netanyahu in Israel right now?
Very poignant and difficult question. one of
Around
the
your,
things.
let's talk about around your circles and then overall.
Well, yeah, I'd like to make it a broader thing, because my circles happen to think like me, right? More often than not. Although I have a lot of lefty friends in Israel, and when I say lefty, it's not exactly like here. Although there is some of that disease, but it doesn't mean exactly what it means here, right? I would say that the probably about half the country, if I may kind of make up a number, but about half the people I know, if not more, absolutely loathe the man for a variety of different reasons. Some of them because of some of the bad things he's done internally. I do think he's a bad prime minister for any sort of internal things. I think he's a horrible prime minister for anything that concerns inside of Israel. Where I think he's really good is he is good at doing exactly what is going on now, managing these wars. And I think he has done an imperfect, to say the least, job. I'm trying to be nice here.
Right.
I'm not trying to defend Israel politically. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give a baseline, as objective as I can, opinion. And I'm trying to leave my own opinions out of it, or if it's my opinion, at least say this is my opinion. Okay.
Right.
There is a big fight inside of Israel about, about the government. And I think, and it's specifically about him and his government. And I think one of the big reasons that this war started as it did and in the timing that it did was because of some political maneuvers that he was doing at the time, which I partially agree, partially disagree with what he was doing. He was trying to change the court structure, right? Essentially the judicial branch of Israel, if you will, right? Israel's got two branches, right? We don't have executive, legislative, and judicial. We have two bodies. We have the Knesset, the parliament, and then we have the Supreme Court, right? And that's supposed to create a balance, but everything's gotten out of whack on both ends, both on the government and in terms of the parliament, and in terms of the Supreme Court. So he was trying to essentially do away with a lot of the powers of the Supreme Court. Some of them, in my eyes, justified. Some of them, in my eyes, not justified. Okay.
Right.
So there's a lot of problems with him. I think, what I will say with zero doubt in my mind, right? There's a theory in the beginning. Bibi actually let October 7th happen in order for him to stay in power. I've even heard from people whose opinions I used to respect. Bibi planned the October 7th event and actually drove it forward so that he could drag us into this war, right? And that's, come on, like, if you know anybody in Israel, you go, that's fucking stupid. That's just dumb.
It's the recycling of the 9/11 thing. Israel's behind that. Just to draw us into Iraq and this and that and the other thing. Come on, guys. Right. It's played out, and the problem is now I think unless you're not. First of all, you talked about wokeism going away. I love the fact that I can say retard again. I just fucking love that. Right?
I know, right?
So
there goes TikTok.
Unless you're a complete retard, you will get rid of those conspiracy theorists. You'll get Candace Owens off of your fucking podcasts and start paying attention and using your own mind. It's all played out. Back to Iran. Do you think anything less than a regime change is a failure for the United States and Israel?
I do.
I agree.
I do, clear and cut. I think, I think there has to be an exit strategy. I trust at this point that Trump has at least maybe a number of different exit strategy ideas. I don't know what they are, but I, based on how we've seen him behave during the second administration of his, he's got a plan. I believe, and I agree, that at least overtly and publicly, I'll say, I think that having a stated goal of regime change would have been the wrong thing to do. And so I think that not being a clear goal of this war was very smart of him and of Bibi together to do, because it's not part of the Israeli mission statement either. However, everybody knows, it's no secret, it's out in the public, that what we all want clearly is regime change. What we don't want is to be the nation builder, right? We don't want to come in and take responsibility for building this country, because it shouldn't be up to us, right? Look at the Iraq example, right? Iraq was a terrible folly in the sense that we didn't have that strategy. We were like, oh yeah, we'll build them a democratic government, blah blah blah. Come on, guys, that's not reality, right? And certainly not when you're dealing with these people, with Muslim people. They think differently.
Again, that's not understanding the region, right? That's not understanding the politics behind the region.
Exactly. What we need to do in order to get that, okay, and this is what I'm getting to, like the military goals of this thing are relatively clear and concise, and they are military type goals. The regime change, as stated by Trump, by the way, as stated by Bibi, should be supported by us, but not actually carried out by us. And what we need to do to achieve that through these airstrikes and through a lot of the stuff we're doing, what we need to do is enable the people of Iran to take over on their own. It is their country. They deserve to run it. And that is why we're not hitting oil facilities, right? Israel did hit an oil facility last week, and Trump got pissed at Bibi, and he said, hey, motherfucker, don't do that shit again. And Bibi was like, right, my bad, I won't do it again. And right, so, and the reason we're not hitting those facilities, the reason we've been trying not to hit their power plants and that kind of thing, is so that the people of Iran can keep living and hopefully take over. What we need to be doing is we need to be flooding Iran with light weapons, AKs, whatever. And by the way, I think this is a beautiful piece of irony. First of all, I think we are doing that. I just don't know if we're doing that at a high enough, level or volume for it to take effect yet, right? The flooding of weapons into the Iranian people. But it's by the way, it's a lot more difficult than people give it credit for.
Right.
Especially with no internet, blah, 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 no means of communication, organization between people. So I think it would be a beautiful piece of poetic irony if all of the weapons that we took from Hamas during this war, we give to people. We've been doing it to a degree. We've been arming for the last, year or so, some various Palestinian little Hamula. Hamula is like a family, like a tribal little family, right? Arabic Hamula. So you could call, here we call them militias or whatever, which is not accurate. But if it makes you understand it, that works. So, and we have been arming them with a lot of these weapons that we took from Hamas that were given to them by Russia and Iran. And I think it would be a beautiful thing for us to flood those weapons into Iran to take over the people who created October 7th, right? And so that's really how this should play out, is we need to enable the people of Iran to do what they need to do, and we need to support them in that endeavor and give them all the tools possible to do it, whether it's communications tools or weapons or food or any other support.
Do you think we can? Do you think we can change the regime without putting any U.S. or Israeli troops on the ground?
I think it's possible. But it's still up in the air, right? It's not as easy as people think it is. It's not as easy as I thought it would be at the beginning of this war. I did not think this war would take months. I thought it would take a few weeks and we're good to go. I thought by now it would have been over, because it's kind of hard to fathom just how hard it is to take out enough people to make the regime fall, right? I mean, we've killed the Ayatollah, all his buddies. We've killed Ahmadinejad, the previous president, not the couple of presidents ago, right, that did the JCPOA thing and all that with the Obama administration, who I can blame for a lot of this actually happening right now.
By dropping off pallets worth of cash for a couple of Anyway, that's a long story.
No, that's a piece of it, but yeah. So
Right. Well,
you
before
know,
we get too far on, because we're almost at an hour, Russ, let's run that promo real quick that you have. Emery, you can wake up and check your alarm that's going off in your background. But Russ, let's run this promo because you got some news to say, and then we're going to keep on with Imri Morgenstern.
Imagine a world where freedom is just a memory, crushed under the rule of a tyrannical president. For Cole Ramsey, a retired Air Force vet, the fight for survival begins with the crack of a sniper's rifle. While he battles a life-threatening wound, his wife Nora must lead their family against a new terrifying enemy. The local sheriff now answers to a shadowy ex-Black Ops agent, backed by the mysterious Arcadia group, and they're hunting the Ramseys. This isn't just about surviving on their farm anymore. It's about taking the fight to them, sabotaging their fuel supplies, and exposing traitors in their midst. As whispers of a wider rebellion grow, the Ramseys stand at the forefront of a new fight for freedom. This is the Hanging Creek Chronicles, Echoes of a Rebellion, a story of unbreakable will in a world gone dark. Find out if they can spark a revolution by clicking the link in the description.
There you go, Hanging Creek Chronicles Volume 2. Russ, tell us a little bit about that.
Man, it is live on Kindle and paperback and ebook, and the Audible is being produced as we speak. It took a lot less time to write this one once I finally got the first one done. So I hope everybody enjoys it. It's out. Don't forget to like and share. I got a post that probably just went live on Facebook. So like and share it. Leave a review when you read it. And book 3, I'll hopefully have out by the fall.
Congratulations. That's awesome. But once you get by the first one, man, then it's all, then they're actually, I suffer from imposter syndrome, right? That's I wrote a book. I'm not an author, but
Yeah, exactly.
Once you get done with the first or second or third one, then you are on top of it. Emery, we had talked a little bit earlier in the green room about why the timing for this particular war with Iran was almost like, it was almost perfect timing, but there's a little bit of a reasoning that I feel was we just had to go at this time. And I offered my opinion to you that, this is the last generation of Iranian people that remember what it was like before the takeover, before the radical takeover, 79, I think, 74, 79. But what do you think? Do you think this timing was fortuitous just because of that type of thing?
I think this timing was absolutely necessary for all the reasons. The reason you bring up, I think, is incredibly insightful and correct. And another interesting thing about it, right? Not only so 1979, I wasn't even around for that, right? I was born in 82. I remember I remember all the, growing up, hearing all this stuff about Iran and whatever. It's always been a topic in Israel because we've always known that Hezbollah is Iran, Hamas is Iran, et cetera, et cetera. An interesting thing that kind of shows you a little window, a little peek into Iranian people is if you look at the people who are in support of Reza Pahlavi, right, the Shah's son, who may or may not be the person to take over if this revolution actually takes place. If you look at it, the majority of people supporting him are the younger people. And what that shows us is that the younger people, and I've heard a bunch of interviews with younger people from Iran, and by younger, I mean my age and lower, right? The people that were not at least 8 or 10 years old during the time of the revolution in 79, they don't remember the period predating this. And so the previous Shah, he was great as far as the West was concerned. He was not so great as far as a lot of Iranians were concerned. Not so great at all, right? He imprisoned a lot of people. He did a lot of stuff to the people who were against him. He was an absolute monarch. He was just wanting to be closer to the West, and he was anti-Islamic, which to me, great, bring him back, right? From Western eyes, not necessarily from Iranian eyes. And so I think a lot of the younger people who want him back in power, not back in power, but, Reza, the son, I think they don't have that memory of back then. But I think he may be great, but I think it really shows your point exactly, that a lot of the people now, if we let this go on for another generation, excuse me, it would be a very different story trying to get accomplished what we're trying to do right now.
Yeah, especially someone in chat was saying, yeah, because these younger people, the regime has been indoctrinating them for the longest time. So you get within another generation or two, and that's all they know. That's all they've ever known Iran to be.
Look, we can make the same case about America and Israel for that matter, right? We have had, since about that time, right, we have had time of prosperity and too much prosperity. And what I mean by that, because we are so successful as a nation, because we are so successful as a Western culture beyond just the American borders, we have become lazy, complacent, and we don't understand, and we don't suffer. We don't suffer enough to understand what real suffering is, and that we are very fast driving ourselves into a really, really, really bad place because we've had it too good. And I'd love for it to be back to being too good as long as people remember where we came from, right? You're still, Jenny from the hood, man, don't forget the block. Or whatever the fuck she said, right?
Right.
Don't forget where you came from, because you're bound to repeat it, like you said earlier in the show.
Yeah. Well, and it's one saying that we have is, good times makes weak men, right? And that's where we're at right now. Let's see. Let's go ahead. No, go ahead, because I'm just cycling through questions for you. So carry on with your thought.
I gotcha. Yeah, it's it. I just,
and until we face harder times, right? Until we face harder times, that's when men always stand up. They always, when's the last time the greatest generation, maybe World War II, right? Where the entire country, the ladies involved also, they took under the industrial portions of the country while the men were out fighting, right? That made the best generation. I hope it doesn't come to that, to get that manliness back, get rid of this toxic masculinity they keep preaching about, right? I don't quite understand that, but so I think. Go ahead. Sorry. No, carry on.
In Israel, we just went through this, right, with this war, where we were like, oh man, this war started, October 7th happened. We're like, oh, this new generation's so fucked. They're just on Instagram and they want to order their food, right? Post-COVID, nobody left the house, blah, blah, blah. We got so lazy and it was disgusting, right? Everybody's got glasses now because our faces are in a stupid
Right. I know.
And I have to say that these kids got up and took the fight to Hamas. A lot of us older guys were there too, but the younger guys stood. They picked up their proverbial sword and they went and kicked some ass. And they were not given the appropriate tools in terms of training and blah, 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 and all this other stuff, and all that's correct. But they stood up and they took this fight back to these heathens. And I think that gave me a lot of a kind of a backwind about America too, because I think that when the going gets tough, the tough will get going. And that's a big reason why we do what we do in the training world, right? Is to make us have a responsible and ready and ethical armed society, unlike, for example, Afghanistan, where everybody's armed, but it is not exactly an ethical society, right? And so that's really what we're trying to do. But that gives me some hope.
Good. Well, hopefully that doesn't come to an October 7th type of event for us here in the United States. Because look, we see wars, right? We've seen wars, and the Air Force is bombing the shit out of somebody, like Trump said today. But we haven't gotten our hands dirty. As an American populace, we haven't gotten our hands dirty. And hopefully we don't ever have to. I'm going to cycle through a couple questions for you, Imri, real quick. Susan wants to know if you're going to be at RCPT this year.
Unfortunately, I think it might be going on like now in the next week, and now I cannot. The next one I believe is in May, and if I can, I will make it. But because of all my trips during this war, it's screwed up my ability to make money, and so now I got to pay up, pay up all the bills that I've been missing. And I'm happy to be behind on all this because I believe I'm doing the right thing. So, but
100%.
yeah, I love RCPT. I've not gotten to be there since this war broke out, and RCPT, that's one of my beautiful parts of our family. I love RCPT. I love the jumping and all that, but that's not why we go. We go because
That's actually where you and I first met.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Patrick says, how much is it going to take for these surrounding countries to start hitting back? And he's talking about the Islamic countries that are surrounding Iran. How much more are they going to take before that? And I'm not sure about hitting back. But it leads me to a question. We talked about ground troops. Do you ever see a situation or a scenario where some of these Islamic or Middle Eastern countries that Iran's been picking on put together some type of coalition to go onto the ground?
Okay, so there's two issues here. Let's talk about the other Gulf states for a second, right? So you have Qatar, which is the other head of the Hydra, right? Qatar, Iran, which owns Tucker Carlson, but not only Tucker Carlson, they own a lot more of America than Tucker. But then you have the Saudi thing, the Saudi quagmire, and I say it's a quagmire because Saudi should be and was historically just straight up against Iran, right? Saudi is the head of Sunni Islam, and Iran is the head of Shia Islam. I'm oversimplifying, but it's and so you would expect them to be the first ones to go in and be like, oh yeah, let's kick these guys' ass. Saudi actually, with China as a mediator, Saudi actually last year had talks with Iran about making some deals, right? So weird shit is happening. And then you have the third circle there in the Gulf nations, which is the Bahrain, UAE, the good guys of today's Arabian Peninsula, right? I'm doing air quotes, the good guys, because the jury's still out, right? But they're behaving like they really want to be part of the world, right? The last couple of years. And then you have the ones, Oman, for example, that are kind of like, Oman, Kuwait, that are kind of like, leave us out of everything, right? We have our own problems and we don't want to get involved. I think what's common among all of them is that they're all afraid of Iran.
Right.
They're afraid of Iran. As much as they hate the Iranian regime, they're all afraid of the Iranian regime. And so that's why they're all holding back. They're not lazy in the sense that they're concerned about spending their money on bombs and airplanes. They're all American bombs and airplanes anyway, right? So they may not be the newest and latest and greatest, right? But they have F-16s and F-15s and all that jazz. So I am not surprised that they're not joining in. I think, there's some talk in the last few days about Saudi actually potentially joining in. I think if they do, it'll be minimal. I think it is showing just how impotent these leaders are in all of these countries, because lest we forget, just a few short years ago, Iran attacked Saudi Arabia directly before this war. Yeah, Iran attacked Saudi Arabia directly via the Houthis, and we did nothing. We did nothing, right? They attacked some of their oil refineries and that kind of thing, and oil wells. So I think if they do, it'll be pretty impotent. If any European country jumps in, it'll be completely impotent. It is Israel and America, and then the rest of the countries, when they aid us, I think it's going to be in less directly military ways.
Either that or caravan through the straits, I would suspect, protect and stuff like that. But you said something that I never really thought of, where Saudi was actually in talks with Iran and also with China. And it kind of put a light bulb off from my head, because it just shows how important a strong America is from a leadership standpoint.
Yes.
Because Trump had the Abraham Accords all set up. it was all coming together, right? It was all, and then all of a sudden you get sleepy Joe Biden, the dementia-ridden fool that he was, weak, and now these other Gulf state countries, right? Now they're going to look for strength in other places, right? So I don't know if that really played a factor in that or not, but I mean, Iran and Saudi Arabia have been at each other forever.
Yeah. There's also the Iran-Iraq war that we can't forget about, but now Iraq belongs to Iran.
Right.
So, yeah, it's, nothing is simple over there. We have a tendency to go, oh, all the Arabs over there, they all think the same. They don't think the same. They're all Muslim. So a lot of their thought process starts from Islam, right? Because Islam is not just a religion, it's a political system, it's a way of life. It tells you every aspect of the world and how it should be run. But there are different schools of thought, and then there's politics, right? And everybody at the end of the day has their own politics. So even among the same side, right? Even the difference in politics between Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas, which, by the way, Hamas is not a Shia organization, unlike Hezbollah, which is a Shia organization. And then you go, wait a minute, what the fuck? I thought the Shias and the Sunnis hated each other. Why is Iran supporting Hamas? Well, they're supporting Hamas because they're against the bigger enemy, the Jews, right? And Americans.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I didn't realize that
Exactly.
Hamas was not Shia. That's interesting.
Hamas is not Shia.
That's great. I'm glad I learned something. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Go ahead. I'm going to look through some more.
So just going back to the Gulf states, it's hard to tell if any of them are really going to do the right thing. I think if any of them do, it'll be either Saudi Arabia and or the UAE. I hope it's the UAE because they really have been showing themselves to be the good guys for a number of years now. And they have shown, let me say it this way. I hope that the UAE can prove me wrong in what I say about Islam. I hope that the good example of what Islam could be, which is not going to happen, but I hope that they come out and show the world that there is such a thing as peaceful Islam or reformed Islam or, not completely insane jihadi Islam, if that's a thing. I don't believe that's a thing, and I'll tell you why. The Muslim Brotherhood is why. Not that they're part of the Muslim Brotherhood, but the concept of the Muslim Brotherhood, right? Because they were started by Qasim al-Banna in the 1920s in Egypt, right? The Muslim Brotherhood was an Egyptian organization, ended up getting kicked out of Egypt because they were so crazy and trying to assassinate presidents and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And they were kicked out. Well, who picked them up? Qatar, right? So the Muslim Brotherhood is located in Qatar. The point I'm trying to get to is that the Muslim Brotherhood has a very different way of viewing their jihad struggle.
Right.
The Muslim Brotherhood has a very different view of jihad than your normal terrorist, booger-eating, sandal-wearing morons who are going and trying to bomb people. Yes, they love it when Jews die and Christians die and anybody who's not Muslims die at the hands of Muslims. But they realize that their way to change the world, and guys, go read their charter, right? Look it up on Google. The Muslim Brotherhood is about spreading Islam through dawah. Dawah is the Muslim principle of converting people through education. And education isn't just, hey, let me teach you about this beautiful religion, Islam. Education is buying Harvard. It's buying Texas A&M. It's buying Yale. It's buying Tucker Carlson. That is dawah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's by sword, by education, or you're gonna convert by tax, right? What do they call the tax?
Well, the jizya is a different concept, right? That's a Quranic thing where, look, you're not going to kill every single Christian and Jew. Why? Because you need slaves. You need slaves. And so, and by the way, jizya is much more than a tax. But I don't want to get off on that tangent because I'm trying to get to the point that I'm hoping that the UAE will be that shining beacon of light that shows the world that not all Islam is just devil worship.
Right.
Right now, they're not doing a great job because they're not helping, at least overtly. If there's anything under the surface that I'm not aware of, then, great. And I'll give them credit for that. But I think they're the only chance. Bahrain, maybe. Morocco is too far to get involved. They don't care. But Morocco would be another option of a country that may be willing to at least verbalize the correct side of this. Yeah, they're just too afraid. And look, they're not wrong. And here's why they're not wrong. Because just like this week, the New York Times reported, for what it's worth, the New York Times reported that higher up Israeli military officials were telling the New York Times that that, hey, we may not be able to achieve all of our military goals in this war against Iran. However, caveat, if we were to quit this war today, they're saying that, we will have achieved a victory in this war. We will have achieved enough to have justified this war, even if we quit right now, which would be a horrendous mistake, of course. Horrendous. One of the things that we have to learn and implement from, if you want, look, hate Israel as much as you want, but we have a shared enemy, right?
Right.
And I believe, obviously, we're one people. I believe we're one and the same. Israel, America. We have the same values. Anybody here that doesn't see it is not paying attention. You're a fucking idiot. To be frank, right? I'm done being nice, guys. I just speak truth. So,
I would say in a lot of the circles, and it blows my mind because I don't think people realize how liberal Israel is. I mean, you have so many different cultures within that little strip of land, right? And you have the gay pride parades you guys got going there, and I don't understand the leftists where they're bashing Israel the way they do. It doesn't make any sense to me. Guys, I know I'm running late, but anytime I have a regional expert, someone I admire on the show, we roll with it. And we're just going to, because you know why? I'm learning something. And
Absolutely.
I'm fascinated with the history behind what we do, why we do things. So, yeah, suck it up, buttercups. And we're going to run for as long as we... What's that?
If I may. Let me just finish my previous. I know I'm long-winded, but
go. I love it.
So, I'm sorry, guys. I hope you guys are still with us.
No, it's blowing up.
But what I'm trying to say in my long-winded, convoluted kind of way is, if we can learn anything from Israel's previous forays with Gaza in the last 20 years, is every time we go in there, something happens. They start shooting tons of rockets into all our cities. Blah blah blah. We go in. We mow the grass, as some people have been saying here, right? And mowing the grass, no, you gotta take the grass out with the root if you don't want the grass there, right? And that's so much harder than it seems, right? So, the lesson to be learned, right, after all these sessions of mowing the lawn, we got October 7th. And there were a lot of things that kind of went into it. But if we mow the lawn, this shit's going to come back with a vengeance. It's like not finishing your antibiotic treatment, right? If I have to take my antibiotics for 7 days, after 3 days of taking it, my symptoms go away and I stop, that shit's coming back with a vengeance. We all know it. We all know it in the medical center, right? This is the exact same thing. You don't finish the job, we're screwed. For generations, by the way.
Well, and we've been doing this for 49 years, for the love of God. It took a wartime president, a guy who's not into politics, a businessman from godforsaken, a Yankee businessman, to come in here and finish the job and actually do what he says. Look, everyone's surprised that we're bombing Iran. In his speeches for the election, he says, I'm going to, literally puts his arms out, I'm going to bomb the shit out of them. He told you what he's going to do. I know you're not used to politicians doing what they say they do. But don't be surprised by the orange man. He's doing what he told you he's going to fucking do. I mean, good God. What? Yeah, so we got to finish it. And I'm with you. I think if anything short of a regime change, we're passing this on to our generations above. I'm with you 100%. Let's see what other question we got here. Will says, how come you never hear Israel bombing? You're only hearing America bomb? Because America, first of all, I'll answer it, and Imri can elaborate on it. America is responsible right now for the military And I'm not talking about the head of the military. I'm talking about ballistic missile launchers. I'm talking about things like that. I'm talking about storage of ammunitions and stuff like that. Where, on the other hand, on the onset of this war, Israel was responsible for, Emory.
So there's a couple
Great
things.
segue.
So Israel, yeah, thank you. That was perfect, and I ruined it. Israel was responsible for a lot of the taking out of, first of all, what they're calling the 12-day war. Even before this started, right? We enabled air supremacy, not just superiority. Right? There's a big difference there. Supremacy. We can fly A-10s. We can fly Apaches in there. Gentlemen and ladies. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. That is supremacy. Air supremacy. So that was before. Now Israel, ironically enough, because usually in things like this, America is very outward about what it's been doing, save for special operations and that kind of thing, right? But generally speaking, America puts out information about what it's doing. Israel never has until now. Israel has been a lot more open about what it's been doing. I think a lot of the reasons for that is to show the Israeli people that, hey, guys, we are doing stuff, right? We're not just eating these missiles every day for no reason.
Right.
Understand,
and responsible
guys,
for
my
taking
family
out
and friends
heads,
are in bomb
heads
shelters
of,
every day.
Well, and you get the alerts. We all. I mean, I subscribe to the alerts too. I see the alerts that you guys see. But in Israel was, because of their Mossad, because of their intelligence. Correct me if I'm wrong. They were responsible on the onset to take care of the heads of state. They were to isolate and mitigate the heads. Look,
Correct.
the U.S. didn't bomb the Ayatollah. I promise you that. I bet you an IDF bomb landed on his forehead, though.
Man, if you dig around on the internet, you can find some pretty great evidence for it.
Exactly.
Just saying.
But yeah, you're right. And I think the way this is being handled is, let me put it this way, it is stupid smart, right? Meaning it's smart. It's incredibly smart the way it's being handled on both sides, both by the Trump administration as well as Israel. Because public perception here is a huge thing. That's what differentiates this war that we've been in the last 2 years from all the wars before. We are truly in the first of its kind, 5th generation war. The big thing that differentiates 5th gen from all the previous generations of warfare is not actually the technology we employ, but it is the enemy's use, the enemy's use of our citizenry against ourselves, right? So all of this stuff, and as evidence, now this should put the Tucker, Candace, and all those other fuckheads, it should put them into context, because they're literally being used as a tool to convert these useless idiots here in our country against ourselves, to try to eat us ourselves from the inside. And that's really what makes this 5th gen warfare, the use of AI bots and blah, blah, blah. I'm not a super high tech guy. So, but I do know what's going on in that realm to a degree. And to subvert your enemy's populace against itself, that's a great new way to win a war, right? And we have to make sure they don't succeed in.
Well, we're just now joining that war, right? The socialists and the Russians have been using that against us forever and ever, right? We started off saying, "Oh, the Russians are the big bad red guy because nukes and this," but they were using the propaganda arm way before that, way before that, and now we're just starting to catch up, get on the bandwagon. And I think it's working. I think AI is a huge factor in that, because now we don't need the nerd behind a keyboard now saying this is what we got to do and this is how we have to do it. Good stuff. Let's stick around. Let's hit the news, guys. Look, I know, I'm sorry, we're a half hour late. And guys, also, if Restream kicks us off at 1:30, I'll hit the go live again. So stick around. But what we're going to do, let's pivot, because I know Emory, and we'll have Emory on again, and we'll talk about the geopolitics behind and the history behind the Middle East, which is important to understand. Let's hit the news real quick while we have Mr. Emory here. I think I went through all the questions for Emory, didn't I? Yep, I answered that one. Carg Island, probably a bad idea.
I didn't answer that. Actually, you had asked that earlier, so I can come back to that when it's relevant.
Okay. And let's see what else is going on. Yeah, I'm not asking that one. That's another one. Chrissy had a pretty good question here. She goes, in your realm of people, the people you know, what is like, look, this podcast was made for preppers, for preparedness people. I would think being prepared in Israel is like just an everyday thing. I mean, I think you kind of have to, right?
Yes, but it takes on a very different shape than how we should or are able to prepare here, for many reasons. So I think in certain ways we can take examples from Israel and implement them here, but in other ways it's not relevant because America is so different, even just geographically different, right? We are a huge nation, huge. This place is huge. Guys, just yesterday I drove from Texas to here. I just got into the house, 14-hour drive, 14, 15, 16, 17-hour drive. And that alone, consider that your considerations become completely different. Nobody in Israel needs to learn how to build a fire. You don't need that to survive. You don't, right? Right. So, just as an example, I've never seen a survival guy in America not start off with how to build a fire in a shelter. You don't need that shit over there, right? So that's just a silly example, but the needs are different. So, yes, it is about preparedness. Also in Israel, we've lost our way with preparedness. The kibbutzim, right? Kibbutz is like an agrarian kind of socialist town, right? And I don't say socialist in a negative way, but because they were socialists, they also failed. Just because they failed, capitalism took over, right? But the whole original idea of these kibbutzim was to have these communities around the borders where people are strong and they're working the fields and they're working the land, but they're also our first line of defense before the army can get necessarily to any one spot, right?
Right.
That is a wonderful idea, but we can't implement that here. That's not practical for America, right? What border are you protecting in that way, right? Not the U.S. Okay, maybe the Mexico border would benefit from some of that, but that's not really relevant, right? So the same preparations over here are not what are needed over there. I have a lot of ideas about, prepping here. I'm not what you would call a prepper. I'm just kind of like, I'll deal with what comes. But of course I am to a degree, right? I have gear, I have training, I build circles of friends that I trust. I have plans. I'm not going to share them, but our stuff, I'd love to get into that conversation, but there's not that much we can draw from Israel. We're not going to start building bomb shelters and ever building here, right?
Right.
What
Exactly.
we should from over there are security measures like protecting our schools, which is something I've been dealing with for a decade now. Before I even moved to this area, I was already doing what I'm doing with the training and everything. Before I hooked up with tactical riflemen and that whole thing, even I was asked to come out to Indiana, ironically, which is where I am right now. But I was asked to come out to Indiana and do a thing. Hey, all these active shooters, school shootings, blah, blah, blah. Can you come out here and do firearms training for teachers at this school board in this certain county asked me to come out. And I said, nope. And they were like, wait, what? You don't want to help? And I said, I very much want to help, but I don't believe in what you're doing and how you're doing what you're doing. First and foremost, if the teachers wanted to carry guns, they would have joined the police or the military and not become a teacher for your kid. A. B, I'm more than happy to train these teachers, and I'll do it for free. So that the hell no came after this conversation. I was like, I'll do it for free, but you're going to give me however many teachers it is, let's say 20. You're going to give me these people for 5-day weeks for 4 weeks of training. And at the end of that 4 weeks of training, I will tell you who should and should not, in my eyes, after having spent a month with them, be allowed to carry a gun around our children, right? Let's not take that point too lightly. And so they didn't like that. And so I said, look, I'm not saying no because I don't want your kids protected. I want your kids protected at least as much as you do. But there's a way to do things. And if you're not willing to put the effort into training them correctly, I'm not willing to be a part of, a potential event where a teacher killed a kid or a kid, God forbid, died because of a teacher, right? So, that whole thing with the schools, even back then. And I came up with a program to teach them how to deal with an armed intruder without actually being armed themselves. And I think it was a pretty decent system. Point I'm trying to get to is that, there's time and place for things. There's a way to do things, and we have to be creative. And even from the onset then, I said, look, guys, it's not a fun thought to say I have to have armed guards at my kids' schools. Nobody wants their kids to go to school and see M4s at the entrance. Nobody wants that. In Israel, we started doing that at every school in the country. Granted, they're not Delta Force dudes or Navy SEALs standing at the gates, right? It's old Russian guy. You have weapon, but that and there's more things. I'm not going to divulge secrets that the terrorists can use, but we had all these school attacks and hostage situations in schools up north and blah blah blah. Those are things we need to do here, and it's not even because of terrorists; it's because of our homegrown terrorists. I'm pretty sure that's the first time I've actually used that term in a correct way. So there are things that we need to learn from this Israeli security apparatus. Prepping wise, I'll happy to come back and I'll be happy to come back and we can have a whole discussion on that. Let's come up with ideas.
Well, the one thing that I found from the IDF stuff that I've been familiar with is that our active shooter mitigation response has changed over the last few years. And based on the IDF, first man in doctrine, we had a shooting at Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, where SWAT wanted to do that surround and contain type thing. Meanwhile, the Muhammad Jihad's in there popping people, right? And it takes an hour for you to get to the first victim. Now, I'm a medic. I know the golden hour, right? I know I got to get to a patient within a certain amount of time. And when you're playing fuck with a guy who's just popping people for no good reason, you can't surround and contain. You got to go in. And that's a doctrine that we here in Florida have changed a little bit in part to hopefully some of our training that we do down here anyways. But we'll see. But let's move on to a little bit of news, guys. Imri, stick around because I want to get your opinion on some of this shit popping off. We spoke a couple of weeks ago about a bomb that was found at CENTCOM. Nobody knew it was just a bomb scare. A few days later, an airman actually found the bomb. Well, a couple of people have been identified for setting that bomb, and it's kind of interesting where they flew off to.
A brother and sister have been indicted in Tampa, Florida, charged in connection with an attempted bombing at MacDill Air Force Base. That base is home to U.S. CENTCOM, Central Command. Now, investigators saying the siblings fled the country after the failed bombing. MacDill, meanwhile, has been on high alert for days. Chad Mills from our Scripps News Group is live outside MacDill. And Chad, authorities say the brother is still on the run.
They say he is in China, in fact. They say that is where he fled to after placing the bomb at this visitor center behind me. Again, we're at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. The visitor center you are looking at is just outside the gate. This is an area the public can access. It is not behind the gate in a secure area, in other words. Let's start, though, on March 10th. That's when the U.S. attorney says the bomb or improvised explosive device, IED, was placed at the MacDill Visitor Center by 20-year-old Alan Zhang. They say he placed a short, cryptic 911 call at the time reporting a bomb somewhere at MacDill. The device did not detonate, and law enforcement later safely recovered it 6 days later after it was discovered by an airman. 2 days after the bomb was placed, authorities say that is when Alan and his sister, 27-year-old Mary Zhang, fled the country, selling a car and buying plane tickets to China. Authorities say they traced the 911 call back to Zhang and discovered that he left the country. They say his sister, Anne Marie, later returned to the U.S. and was charged with helping her brother flee and destroy evidence. Again, authorities say her brother is still at large.
The investigation hasn't ended. We are exploring any number of leads to see anyone and everyone that is involved in this matter will be brought to justice.
The U.S. attorney wouldn't share too many details, but he did say authorities are exploring every avenue possible to get Zhang back to the United States. He also said that Zhang's mother is also in custody and facing deportation as a quote-unquote overstay.
I love that, first of all, that the mother's going to get deported for overstaying her visa. I love that. And that's all because of what ICE and TSA has been doing here or ICE rather has been doing here in the country. So yeah, if you're a family member of a criminal, and I don't know the background, I don't know why these Chinese guys decided to, but they haven't ruled out that it had to do with the war in Iran. But they, of course, didn't specifically say that either.
No,
but,
I never did.
So I don't know quite what's going on. But talking about the ICE agents, and I made a couple of notes that. Because, Trump decided he was going to go ahead and deploy ICE into the airports. And everyone's like, it's a bad idea. Don't do that, this, that, the other thing. But you know what? I did a little bit of research, and I went back and looked at every city that ICE was deployed in. Airport lines dropped immediately. Traffic reduced by almost 30%. Classroom sizes shrank. No wait in emergency room. And they're trying to tell the American people that there were only 11 million illegal immigrants brought into this country. But all this stuff is a systemic effect when ICE enters into a community. Not buying it, guys. But Trump did deploy ICE into some of the bigger airports. And you'd be surprised what the left and Hakeem Jeffries said about ICE agents. Not really surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
We just heard from the White House about President Trump's plan to deploy ICE agents to airports tomorrow.
And see, this is from CNN, so I don't only listen to Fox News, you retards. I listen to everything. And you'll notice also with some of the other clips.
I want to bring in House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries. Thank you for being here this morning, sir. What's your response to what Tom Homan revealed here?
Well, good morning. Great to be with you. There are three things that have been true since Donald Trump and Republicans came back into power last January. Life is more expensive, life is more chaotic, and life is more extreme. The last thing that the American people need are for untrained ICE agents to be deployed at airports all across the country, potentially to brutalize or in some instances kill them. We've already seen how ICE conducts itself. These are untrained individuals when it comes to doing the current job that they have for the most part, let alone deploying them in close exposure and highly sensitive situations at airports across the country.
But it seems like it's happening. Tom Homan is in charge of it, and he's working on a plan right now. Is there any chance that there could be some kind of deal done soon? I mean, obviously what the president is trying to do is squeeze lawmakers to try to finally come up with a plan to fund DHS.
Do your job. Meanwhile, this is ICE.
How about you, Emma? Share?
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Doesn't look like they're there intimidating people and murdering people. I mean, at one point, he almost hit that kid in the head with that water bottle, but it was very cold, and I'm sure that he had brain freeze from drinking it. Give me
It blows my mind. It just blows my mind the idiocracy that we hear, the idiot stuff that we hear from the left. And I mean, it blows my mind.
It's gaslighting, right? I didn't know what gaslighting really meant until my 20-year-old daughter told me what gaslighting is. This is what the left does. And they blame us for gaslighting. This is what they're doing. Then they say they're not doing it. These people are crazy. I don't know what to tell you. They're friggin' lunatics.
Look, to me, it's the simplest thing ever. You watch the video clip that we just saw, and you go, wait a minute. The person is saying don't put untrained people in there when you are the exact person that shut down the money paying for the trained people to do this. Shut the fuck up. Who buys it? But you have to be so stupid to listen to that and not be enraged.
You got to be a retard. To follow anything that left is spewing out right now, you have to be a complete idiot. And I call them constantly. I'm on Facebook. I get so many death threats. I call them all retards. You're retards, people. How many times can I say retard before I get dropped?
Look, I gotta say,
we're doing good tonight.
I try to walk a very thin line on this left-right topic, because I bet everybody in the chat room can figure out who I voted for, right? Or didn't vote. That let's put that aside a second. I have a lot of friends here in America today that are left-wing people. They're not the crazy purple hair morons, right? They're not the uber retards, but they and family members, by the way, as well, right? I have a lot of people on the left that I converse with all the time. Some of them you can have a conversation with, guys. Not the people we just saw on CNN, right? The Communist News Network, but you know, and it baffles me. It baffles me that that we do in fact still have intelligent people on the American left today, and it's just it's baffling. I can't even make sense of it anymore.
Well, you can't. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, I mean, Pete and I have said this on the podcast more than once, and we've heard it several times. The Democratic Party of our parents and grandparents is not the Democratic Party of today.
100%.
Yeah, they've gone to, and they're infighting within themselves, right? They have no real leader. They have no real plan. Their only plan is Trump bad. Trump bad. Exactly. That's their only plan. Come up with a plan to fund TSA that doesn't allow men to play in women's sports, because that's what they want to add to it, and doesn't don't add that you want ICE defunded, because that's what they want to add to it. But the common person doesn't even know ICE is already funded through the big, beautiful bill. It's ridiculous. It's gaslighting. These people are mentally ill. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. It is what it is. But up your wheelhouse, Imri. The trusty people of Iran. The trusty people. They're very trusting. And anytime they enter into negotiations, you always know that they come with open hands, and they're always going to be honest with you. Because, well, I'll just run the clip here.
Because read their book.
But you're dealing with a U.S. president who is unlike any other in the past. Look at the statement and please react to the statement, his State of the Union address. He has very clearly said, and please tell me where that credibility of the information really comes from, when he says that...
By the way, guys, this was an older clip prior to the war.
Has claimed that Iran is developing missiles that can reach America, and that the negotiations and the terms and conditions are no enrichment at all. So where does the claim of the missiles really come from then?
Well, President Trump has always complained about fake news. So I think now it is himself the victim of fake news, unfortunately. We are not developing, long-range missiles, and we have limited the range of our missiles below 2,000 kilometers.
Also overnight, Iran...
Below, they said that they limited the range of their missiles below 2,000 or 2,000 kilometers. Is that what he said?
Yep, 2,000 kilometers.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, 4,000 kilometers away, this happened.
2 ballistic missiles at strategic U.S.-UK military base on the island of Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. It marks the regime's first threat to U.S. interests beyond the Middle East.
So there you go. So they tell you that they are not developing ballistic missiles that can reach anywhere in Europe, because they don't want to do that. But yet they just fired off a ballistic missile toward Diego Garcia, which is 4,000 kilometers away.
But I tell you what that did. It changed Europe's mind, because if that missile could have reached Diego Garcia, it would definitely reach London, it'd reach Paris, and all those other countries up in that area.
You're right, and hopefully it did, but it doesn't appear that that any of the European nations are now they want to get a little bit involved. I'm not sure what happened to Imri. He's black on my screen off camera. You can reconnect Imri if you want to give the shot, and then we'll be here for you. But that just goes to show you that the Iranian regime has been lying forever, and everything that they've been saying throughout negotiations for the last 49 years is
Exactly.
bullshit. You can't trust them. The only way to get rid of these people is a complete and utter regime change. And there's honestly no negotiating. Emery's going to come right back, guys. Hang tight.
Yeah.
Is that the last clip I had?
No, we have one more.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have prep of the week. So guys, get your prep of the weekend.
Exactly.
Emery, can you hear us?
It's like he picked it. I don't know. I see him. He's popped up here, but I don't see it.
No.
Okay. Anyway, no, you're just a black screen, Emery. Oh, wait. Who was it?
Yeah.
The DHS secretary has been changed. Russ, I don't know if you saw that. And people might not know Mark Wayne Mullen for anything other than this viral clip. I'm going to give a little pretext to this clip I run. Now, remember, he's taken DHS over in the middle of a crisis for them. They're not being funded. We're in the middle of a 40-plus day shutdown with them. But if you remember when Mark Wayne Mullen first came on to the scene, he was a congressman from Oklahoma, and he was, I can hear you, can't see you though. But what he was known for is taking on internet tough guy who also happened to be one of the leads of the Teamsters. Now the Teamsters on a Twitter or a Facebook or whatever. Yep, we got you. We hear you. We just don't see you, Emery. The Teamsters head was at one point calling him a tough guy, calling him a tough cowboy. Well, this guy had to come testify in front of Congress, and this was the exchange between Mark Wayne Mullen and that head of the Teamsters Union.
Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big
No,
guy.
no, stop it.
Is that your
All right.
solution every
Hold it. No, no, sit down. Sit down. Okay. You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit.
Bernie Sanders being the voice of reasoning there. Mark Wayne Mullen was also an MMA fighter at one point, so I'm pretty sure this Teamster slob would have got his ass handed to him right in front of that hearing. I don't know, though. What do you think, Russ?
I'll take it, sell popcorn, man. I'd love to have seen that.
They should have took it. They should have took it out back. I had a whole bunch more news clip, guys, but we're not going to do that because we're running late. So you know what time it is.
It is that.
Prep of the week. All right, guys. Let's see who the preps are. See what we got
There's
here.
quite a few of them got in there.
I love you guys for prepping so much. Emery says he can't hear anything. Just look at our beautiful faces, Emery. Read our lips. Do that Mossad thing. You'll be all right. Patrick Seven said he won. Oh, you did win that med kit. I was pissed off you won that med kit, by the way. So that's good. Yeah, that's fine. That's good. What else we got? Fib says had a local excavator come clear the scrub brush from around the woods to help prevent forest fires. I like that also. Russ, what about you? Any prep?
Well, I'm currently sitting at Dixon Landing here in North Carolina, and I'll be attending the Coastal Plains of North Carolina Community Preparedness event this weekend, hosted by Roy and Julie Dorn and Charlie Clements and his lovely bride. So we'll be doing some training on Saturday. I guess my biggest prep of the week was learning how to drive tow my new fifth wheel and making the proper wide turns. Thus far, I've yet to hit a curb. So nice. We have only had one casualty, and I blame it on I-95 in North Carolina. We lost a shower door. It shattered on our way up here. So, but other than that, no casualties other than that.
Gotcha. Well, I'll show my prep of the week. Russ, if you'll just in private chat, thank Emery for us and tell him I'll be in contact with him tomorrow. That way he doesn't have to stick around. I'll go large screen here.
Yep.
Mama picked up this book on Amazon, which I'm sure I'll get a ban for there. And That's protocols for ivermectin and some other ethyl methyl bad shit that I don't know exactly what it is. But in addition to that, at Tractor Supply, you guys can pick this stuff up as well as this stuff up to go along with that protocol book that she has to treat a number of different ailments, apparently. So, good stuff. Good job, Mama, prepping that up. That was our prep of the week. Let's see what else everybody else has. Thanks, Emery. We appreciate you, brother. Let's see here. Sandwich, prep of the week. Teaching others to process chickens. Good. And
they're doing that on Saturday.
They're doing that up there with y'all, right?
Yeah. That's one of the classes they're going to teach, and they're going to fry some of it. They're going to cook some other way, and then I'm actually going to smoke one while we're up here.
And I think they're going to do that at Mountain Readiness also,
they're
right?
going to be doing it at Mountain Readiness. They're actually at Mountain Readiness. They're actually going to be doing a goat or a sheep, I think. One of the two, Billy Bonds and his son William and Chantal Mullen are going to be doing that. And if you make it up to Montana, they're going to be doing an elk. So that's going to be, I can't wait for that.
Wow, damn. Good job, Sandwich. Guy says he had a good FTX for the weekend. Liked his bag, so his old ruck's a little bit, his new ruck's a little bit better. Lightweight is learning how to camp very lightweight. He was basically just laying on the ground, if I remember right. And after our little training exercise yesterday, our Wednesdays is our training day, we decided we were going to be NASCAR guys and speed change one of his tires that he popped on the way out to the homestead. So that is true. Will been on it. He's found a new plate carrier, loaded 12 mags, 5.56. Got a survival knife from Lost Ways Survival. Excellent.
Paul's
doing another one. Paul, that's Paul? That's right. That's Paul.
Yep, that's Paul.
He's okay. Will's going to be a personal trainer. Awesome. Diana, who's been on top of things here recently.
Very much so.
Medical preps. I like it. Miss Terry, if she's still around. Repackaged the bulk flower. Got 2 garden plots tilled. I miss my garden since I'm not here for the summertime. I'll do some raised gardens up in Wisconsin, but
that'd be cool. I mean, Teresa got those tomatoes last year that we found sitting by the garbage dump, know, and we ended up, they never turned red, which was weird, and I don't know why. But it might be just because she has a brown thumb. I don't know.
All right, because I think ours, and I'm surprised how fast stuff grows in Wisconsin.
Right.
It's well, I guess it makes sense. The growing season's short, but Susie Q planted a lot this week and a fruit tree. Nice. Make sure I don't know what kind of fruit tree you got, but some fruit trees you have to have 2 of them to make it all work and to give fruit. Rev says. He's still on. So apparently he's having the same type of problem, except I have turtle problems and he has armadillo problems. So his 1022
Chris and Mel have armadillo problems too. Yeah, Rev sent me a video on that the other night. I was like, "What in the hell are you doing, Rev?" And then I now it's more context.
Rev, you want to get rid of your armadillos? One way to do it is to treat your grass, especially if you have St. Augustine, because the armadillos come for the grubs. So they'll dig up your grass for the grubs that are underneath. Treat your grass with grub stuff. Nick's working on his daily situational reports.
Yeah, he's been sending those to me. They're actually quite interesting information on them. So sign up for him. Go to I think it's Fortune Papers, The Prepared. Sign up there. I believe is the way you can sign up for him.
Agreed. Ramona says garden. Time for gardens. Damn it, I miss my garden. Real Comms is working on a new mobile command center. Real Comms, I might need to talk to you about doing some stuff comm-wise, because that's something in our group that we are lacking horribly. I know we got a lot of comm gurus, but I need someone to explain comms to me like I am a kindergartner. and basically just say, look, this is what I want to have happen. You tell me what I need to buy to make that happen. So I need that in my life.
Real quick, it just popped in my head. Everybody knows Wes. Everybody went that, especially everybody knows West Side Tower and Rally Point. He is actually going to be in my hometown of Florence at a small preparedness event in June. So in Florence, South Carolina, which is kind of in the middle, not quite as far as Harmony. Might want to, something you want to check out. And if you want dates, just check on the Rally Point website or send me a message and I'll get you the information.
Perfect. Yeah, let's promote that guy. Let's get his business going. Skidmore bought a case of frangibles. Outstanding. And this was a kind of funny story. I've come around to these airsoft guns like I talked about last week. Mm-hmm. So we were doing some stuff with airsoft, and I had our group on patrol. And the biggest guy of the bunch, he looks like Incredible Hulk. I mean, he's just a monster of a man. Jason decided that he was going to shoot him first with an airsoft gun, not with a real gun, with an airsoft gun. So this monster of a man gets hit with a little pellet. He flails back like he was just shot with a 50 cal. He's grabbing his face. As he's falling down, he's going, I'm hit. He shot me in the face. He shot me in the face, clearly by accident, of course. But so I just told him, shut up, lay down, and we'll deal with it. But that's Jason's prep of the week, apparently.
Well, so it's showing that he's doing the Mozambique drill on him.
Basically, but it was them airsoft guns are. I didn't understand how they quite worked, but you can get those damn things pretty accurate if you dial them in the right way. So it was kind of cool.
Are you going to bring yours to Wisconsin?
I wasn't planning on it. Not the airsoft. I mean, I can, but it seems like it would take up room.
Yeah.
Let's see. And Jason said he was being nice. All right, Russ, you do your thing, brother.
Well, folks, first of all, that was just a great podcast. I've learned a lot as well. It's always a pleasure having Imri on. I consider him a brother. He's just awesome. Community and training. That's what we're doing this weekend. We're hanging with our folks, hanging with our friends, and we're also doing training. Can't stress it enough. We have to be prepared for what's coming. We don't know what, but we had to be prepared. That's all I got, Pete. Buy my new book.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Nick also says that he's got something going on his website, so make sure you check it out. Guys, look, I'm sorry. I know we went long, 2 hours. I set this thing out to only do an hour, but you guys stuck it out and hung out with me for 2 hours, so I certainly appreciate that. And I'm a nerd for the history. I'm a nerd for the history of the Gulf area, why we're doing what we're doing. And anytime you get somebody on the show that also is fascinated with the history and actually lived a lot of that stuff, you got to milk it for all you can and get as much information as you possibly can. Now, I know, look, we can have Imri on 100 more times and he still won't tell us everything he wants to, right? But regardless, guys, keep your heads on a swivel, get trained, be safe. If you can't be safe, be dangerous. Thanks for watching the Eden Army podcast. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And remember, be safe. If you can't be safe, be dangerous.